Maybe I... Oh, okay. Credits! I did it! Oh, I did it! I beat the game! I beat the game! And I did it completely blind. I'm very happy about this. Very happy that it's finally over. It's been quite the experience. Yeah. So Ephemeral Fantasia conquered at last. My overall thoughts. I guess first I do have to say that this was a viewer requested game, and was requested by Manadrian. So thank you very much for requesting this game, even though I was already going to play it anyways. But you know, appreciate it. For Ephemeral Fantasia, I went into this game with the thought that this was going to be one of, if not the worst games I have ever played. Because that's generally what other people have regarded it as. You know, this game that doesn't really do what people would want from a game, and you know, it has all these problems and whatnot. And I was definitely expecting the worst. And what I got? Oh, who's that guy? I don't think... Who's that person? What the heck? There's a lot of characters I know, apparently. I don't think this is the worst game in the world. You're gonna call me crazy here, but I actually found some enjoyment from this game. I think this game does some kind of cool things. I think this game does some extremely obnoxious things. I think it has a lot of problems. But I think I enjoyed the times that I enjoyed more than the times that I didn't enjoy. Like, I was having more fun than I was not having fun, if that makes sense. I have here, there's a lot of mediums and lows in this game for sure, where you know how like there's highs and lows in games. Well, this game has a lot of mediums and lows where, you know, it's just like, wow, this totally sucks, and like this was pretty cool, you know, whatever. But it didn't have to hit any highs for me to enjoy some of the things that I was doing. There was just some interesting aspects of it that I thought kind of shined through, and they did better than the other stuff. And I don't know. It's kind of strange. I think ultimately it's not a great game, but I mean, like I said, you know, like I was expecting the worst game ever, basically, and I got something so much better than that. Which doesn't, you know, mean that it's, you know, a fantastic game, but you know, if the bar is set at 0 or -1, then you know, so much better than that can be, you know, at a 5 or a 6 or a 4 or, you know, whatever. It was better, way better than I expected. Story was it satisfying? Not really. No, it did what it had to do, but there really wasn't a lot of meat to this story, which was kind of disappointing. They tacked on a lot of that story towards the end, which I can understand now that I've beaten it, because it seems like it's tied to specific characters. But I spent so much time not experiencing any story, and that was kind of obnoxious because there basically wasn't any story for the first like 30 hours, 40 hours for me or something like that. It was pretty crazy. Did it feel complete? I will say it felt complete. Apparently, I missed out on a lot of characters. It was someone with a sword. Like, where? I didn't even. There was four places of the three places on the map that I've never even been to. One place where I couldn't even get the map for. Couldn't find it for the life of me. Let's see. How was the pacing? Having played plenty of games with poor pacing, I believe this one to be the worst of them for the past, present, and future. It effectively doesn't exist, as it's up to the player to basically make their own fun and figure out what matters and what doesn't. This game is definitely probably number one for the worst pacing. And it's because the game doesn't give you any direction. You have to figure things out for yourself. And when something doesn't work, you don't know if it didn't work because you're wrong, or if you're just there at the wrong time, or maybe that needs to be done later on in the story. There's no direction. There's no like hints. Once you're told information, you kind of don't get access to that information anymore. So it's kind of rough to progress in a game like that, because it becomes trial and error, and sometimes you have to repeat the same mistakes over and over again to even get an idea if you're on the right track or if you're just wasting your time. And I think you waste your time a lot in this game, so the pacing super suffers for that. Thoughts on the story? It basically doesn't exist. You know, I think they did a decent job of bringing the story together and kind of bringing it to a close at the end. But the story of, you know, this island where there's like time mages and things like that, and this one guy is controlling the island and making it repeat the same 5 days because he's gonna die 2 days after that, and he wants to relive the wedding because he loves this girl who has the power to destroy him but doesn't for some reason. It's I wish there were more. I wish it was spread out more throughout the game. And maybe we got more interactions with canon. You know, when we were in dungeons, we started learning lore about the canon, and maybe what makes a holy, and why these people, you know, like the masters of the canon people, are changing their bodies and things like that. Instead, we learn that information from characters, which, you know, felt like exposition in some cases. And it was one of those like, I'm your enemy, but now that you've beat me, I'm going to tell you all of my secrets kind of deal. And it doesn't work for me personally. For gameplay mechanics and design, what gameplay elements stand out? My experience with this game should have made me feel really smart, but every solution I've done never really felt earned. Most of the time, I just needed to resort to trying everything I could, which could be very taxing. Yeah, this game is... It's not very rewarding to play. Or at least the way that I played it wasn't very rewarding to play. When I was given information, sometimes I thought of an idea that would have been like pretty cool. For example, when I got the Celestial Road song, and, you know, I had to play it to go up to the spirit village or whatever, the celestial people, I thought, oh, so the places where the crown and the gem were, if I play that there, maybe there'll be more celestial villages that I can go to. And that wasn't the case. And like, sure, you know, maybe that just wasn't the intent. but it would have been really cool. And it was like one of the first things that came to mind because they made an effort to say that these areas were important, but those areas never amounted to anything for me. And I don't know what I was supposed to do there. Like, you know, how was I supposed to intercept that stuff? I don't know. If a game is requiring me to take extensive notes, it's put itself in a dire spot. Yeah, this is a rough one. Um, I I I see the era that this game came out in. It's 2001. The Chronic just came out. No, I'm just playing. Um, it's it's in an era where the note keeping and things like that. It's probably part of the experience. Um, and like a game like this, it's kind of perfect for handing to a child or something like that and just say, like, figure it out. And in that way, it works. But for me personally, I don't want to say that games shouldn't be making me take notes, but I don't think that games should be making me uh, take as many notes as I needed to in order to figure out what I needed to do, or like how the mechanics of this game work. Um, there definitely should have been some sort of journal in this game, or some sort of aspect that I could reference that had information that the game felt was important, so that I could apply that. It would have been it would have elevated this game far greater than it is right now. The lack of direction in this game is definitely a big issue. They basically drop you into a sandbox and tell you to figure out, and it's not easy to be on board with that kind of approach, especially when the game hasn't presented something to hook you into playing it more. So this was kind of a rough thing to do, because there's so much that you can do in this game, and like when you reach your first wall, it's kind of hard to choose the next thing that you want to do because it's all so open. I feel somewhat fortunate that Rummy was one of the last characters that I recruited, if not the last character I recruited. No, I guess, yeah, it was like the last character, well, one of the last characters. I guess I could have recruited the sailor guy or something. I don't know. But I had felt like I had done everything that I could do in the area that was available to me. And once I had gotten Rummy, then the island opened up, and that's when things kind of clicked into place. Like, okay, I need to recruit characters to accomplish specific tasks and do X and Y, and that really worked out for me. So I was very happy that in some ways I had to do that, but in other ways, it just took so long to figure out how to progress, and the lack of direction just, it hurts, it really hurts. The time aspect is interesting in theory, but is ultimately tedious. Either I need to wait for a specific time to accomplish something, or I have to experiment to find out at what time and where something can trigger. So yeah, like I said, this game doesn't really give you any direction. They drop you in a sandbox and they say, figure it out. The hints that they give tend to be kind of vague. And sometimes the hints that they give you don't seem relevant, but they might be relevant. And then sometimes they give you items and things like that that make you feel like you need to utilize that particular item or something like that in a specific place, which kind of encourages you to use it everywhere you go. Um, it it just would be nice if this game had a little bit more direction on what they wanted you to do with specific things. The item descriptions maybe could have been better. When inspecting certain places that were important, having them have some text or dialogue to indicate that they were important would have been helpful. Saying something like, you know, maybe we could do something here, but I don't think we have what's necessary to do that. Maybe we should go look for that. Or I doubt we can find that right now. Maybe we should go look for something else. Something to help the player be like, okay, this is not where I'm supposed to be right now. Let me go search for something else. And then the aspect of time playing into that and repeating the same days over and over again. I was expecting a way to manipulate the time to my favor, I guess. And that's what I thought the watch from Claire was going to be, but that never materialized into something. I thought that I was going to be able to rewind time or stop time so that I could make sure that I met certain meetings and whatnot, but time always passed on, and sometimes it just became obnoxious to learn information about where people are and how they do things, because again, there's like no direction. Kite, for example, he says, I have to do something on the 4th day, but he doesn't tell you what to do on the 4th day. And another game that has a similar approach to this is Rada Yada Stories. And all the characters in that game, they have like schedules and things like that. They move around and you can follow them. And that's what makes the experience a little bit better when it's utilized like that, because they don't just disappear when the clock strikes a certain time. You get to follow them to their house, and then you know where they live. You get to see what their schedule is, and you can make a plan with that. But if Kite just disappears from standing on the pier or whatever, he could be in literally any house on the entire island at that point. And you don't have the time to check every island or every house on that island or every location on that island to see where he's at, because you don't have the ability to manipulate time. And so a little disappointed that wasn't a mechanic. The music minigame is rough. And I really hope that it's not required to get a certain letter grade to beat the game. So that wasn't the case, I don't think. And yeah, the playing music in this game is very difficult, especially on an Xbox One controller. It is it's tough. It's really tough. But yeah, thankfully it didn't seem like it was required, so I get to live with my 0 on the very first music thing, because I didn't know how to pick, or I didn't know that I needed to pick. Let's see. Reliability mechanics aren't fun, and the reliability gets reduced when running away, ? So from my understanding, the reliability mechanic is a scale from 0 to 100, and the lower the reliability gets, the more likely a character is to ignore your orders when you're in battle. And when you run away from battle, the reliability of a character goes down by 1, I believe. When a character dies, I think the reliability goes down by 5. I didn't test that, but those were the numbers that I thought I saw when stuff like that happened. So The thing about the reliability here is I think it's making the combat more obnoxious than it needs to be. There are a ton of random encounters in this game, like a lot, and they put them in some really obnoxious places too, which I'll get to later. But I think personally, I think I should just make this a cardinal sin that you don't have a 100% chance to run away from battles, because I think that if you're running away from a battle, you're already getting a punishment there. You're not getting experience. You've probably taken some damage for free. Uh, character might have gotten a status effect or something like that. Um, you didn't get the reward for beating the battle. So, like, there's your punishment. But not giving it 100% just means you're going to be tacking on a bunch of more damage, and it becomes obnoxious instead of like, dang, I could have done that battle and maybe got some experience that I actually needed. It starts making the game not as fun. Battles not as fun to do, especially when the battles themselves are extremely obnoxious and have enemies that are heavily resistant to your damage types, and you have to do these weird strategies to beat them, like utilizing instant death for like literally every enemy. It just makes battles take a lot longer than they should be. But to tack on another mechanic there of, oh, they're just not going to listen to you if you keep running away from battles, it's kind of crazy to me. I don't think there's really any reason why any of the characters shouldn't be listening. I'm trying to do the most optimal strategies here, and running away from this battle, it's in everyone's best interest. It's such a tragedy that it took me 30 hours to gain access to leap potions, because they make the game so much more playable. Yeah. So this isn't necessarily a dig on the game, other than for the reasons that I've stated otherwise, of like, it would be so much better if there were actual direction. But this was more of a me thing, where Rummy was the last character that I recruited before the island like really opens up, and I could have really used elite potions a lot sooner than that. It's just kind of a tragic thing that it took me that long, and so I just had to walk literally everywhere. At that point, I thought there wasn't any fast travel, which was scary because I saw how much more island there was. So I'm definitely grateful that there were leap potions. I personally do wish that they were handled a different way. If I could just fast travel to any grid, that would be better. But the fact that there was leap potions at all, I approve. I pretty much loathe with a burning passion how map pieces are handled in this game. It's so obnoxious. I stand by this 110%. Holy cow. I can understand you wanting to hide the map from me for areas that I haven't been. I get it. But having to click on, every bookcase or every pixel or talk to every person, and if that doesn't work, I got to talk to them at a certain time to get access to the map. It's just, it's not cool. And then there's some of them where you can only get them from talking to a shopkeeper and then canceling the shop, and they're like, oh, do you want this for 1,000 money? Like a map piece for 1,000? Like, are you insane, man? Yeah. The map system in this game did not jive with me at all. Recruiting characters is so disjointed, the story around them doesn't flow into other areas and just doesn't work for me. So this is primarily because it's not like one cohesive piece. It's you do a section of their story and then you leave and then you come back and you do something that's like maybe related but maybe not related to what they're doing. And sometimes you just have to like do these far-fetched things. Like in order to talk to Anno, I need to go talk to the person that he respects the most, attack his plant. He like falls unconscious. I steal his key. I go to his room. I get his clothes. Somehow I turn into him. I go talk to Anno and get the reactor key for him so that I can go help Bagoth with something? Like, that's insane. Like, what the heck is going on there? So, yeah, I wish they were maybe a little bit more self-contained and a little bit more continuous. For the Bagoth one, you know, maybe I have this one story where like I'm following him on patrol and then, you know, he sees something and we're going over there and then, you know, he's like, oh, you know, I gotta go stand guard at the thing. And he hears the noises inside. So he goes inside to investigate and then, you know, we die or something like that. And it's like, oh, okay, I need to find the key for this. Or, you know, it resets or something like that. And then maybe we get another option at that point, because now we know that there's going to be something there. And just kind of like influence it like that. Could be annoying, I guess, having to redo it. But there is a fast forward option in this game, which I don't know if I have that in here. I do. I greatly appreciate the fast forward in the cutscene. So they do have that kind of option. They could also automatically just skip to the point where you left off, make it so that you're not going through the same cutscenes over and over again. I would have appreciated that approach a lot better, because you know, some of these things, it's a little while having to go through them, or having to find the triggers for them is also kind of crazy. There were points where, like for the Rummy one, I had to go to her house at a certain time, and I've been to her house so many times. I didn't even know it was her house at one point. But it turns out that I needed to meet her on the beach after I had the ability to like save people from the thing, and I don't even know when that triggered. Like it's just kind of it needs to be a little bit different to match what I personally would have wanted. Anyways, yeah, I greatly appreciate the fast forward in the cutscenes. I was not expecting that in a game like this, and I think it's very cool. The battles in the castle may be the most obnoxious thing the game has to offer. The purpose of them for being there is effectively non-existent, and they severely slow down the game for no discernible reason. Also, the battles later in the city make things even more obnoxious. So yeah, I know that this is kind of like one of those, it's not a given in games, but it's like a traditional convention of sorts where, you know, if you're in town, there's not going to be any battles. And I don't necessarily mind that there are battles in the castle, or there are battles in town when it makes sense. But I don't feel like any of the scenarios that I've played out really made sense. It's like eventually I got an explanation that we're fighting enemies like in between time or something like that, and it honestly just I wasn't with it. The amount of times that I needed to go through the castle to talk to somebody or to learn something or just to experiment, and having to go through all those battles, it didn't work for me. I feel like the battle should have been self-contained in areas that were not like domiciles, like where people live, in habitat. I wanted to say like habitat, but that's not where, places where people are not living, basically, on the beaches, in the forest, on the mountain paths, like go for it. But keep that stuff out of the areas where I need to do the most experimentation at. It drives me nuts. Having certain areas where fog sphere doesn't work is just crazy to me. Yeah, I don't get this one. I don't get the reasoning behind it. I don't get the motivation behind it. I don't get the game design behind it. Uh, I why wouldn't you let me want to have less battles when I spent the money to have less battles? And then you consume the item too, by the way. Insane. Spending 6 hours to brute force a riddle, and the reward is for solving it is not available, was just mega draining. Yeah. In some ways, I can see this being on me. Saying, okay, I know X, Y, and Z is going to happen here, here, and here. So I shouldn't try to achieve this when I know that those events are going to happen. The problem is that during that section of the game, everything kind of changed in a way where they notated that, like all the status quo was no longer there. And so I didn't have any direction or any information to kind of put me on what is still happening and what is not still happening. And so the whole 6 hours thing, like that was just me. I couldn't solve the riddle. Apparently it's not well translated. I have no idea. But I myself am not good at solving riddles. So I opted to brute force it, and it took me 6 hours to do. The 6 hours part, that is not on the game. That's on me. But what is on the game is reaching the end of that area and learning that there's nothing there. That sucks. And that should not have been in there. If the most ideal scenario is I get a piece of dialogue as I'm walking into that dungeon, and it says, hey, the gem, the crown, and the sword were available at these times, and we're looking for them right now. Are we sure we want to go into this dungeon? When the enemy might have them or something like that. Again, more direction, more indication that, okay, this is not the right time for me to be doing this. I need to come back with information or something like that. And direction. The game needs more direction. That's the moral of the story right now. Not a fan of scaling enemies used in this way. Yeah. So on one hand, having to fight lower level enemies is pretty obnoxious and not really all that fun. And so I definitely can see the appeal of having enemies always scale. You're always getting valuable experience. You're always getting a challenge of sorts as the game progresses. I think scaling enemies works when you allow the player to have as much control over the battle as possible, And that's probably just more of a fancy way of saying, let me run from battles at 100% run rate, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Uh, but because you can't do that, you fight these enemies that are resistant to all your damage types, and you gotta use instant kill move on them. If you don't have instant kill moves on them, well, tough. You gotta find some other way to do it, and sucks. For combat, I love how some attacks and abilities that would traditionally be spells, air quotes, in other JRPGs are action point abilities. Mouse's Charging Strike and Claire's Buff Circles are just super cool additions. This was one of the coolest things for me. I actually really enjoy the combat system in this game. There are some aspects of it that I wish were done a little bit differently, but I like that it's somewhat fast paced, and I like that the abilities that characters have are actually useful. Like almost all of them have a purpose to use them. Like for example, Slash on mouse, it has like 2 AP usage, and I'm sure there's some scenarios there. I tried it on the final boss, where Slash will do like 600 damage or something like that, and let's say Ray Strike will do, I don't know, 1500. What was doing, like 1500 at the end there, so we just need 3 slashes for it to be equal to that, or surpass it even. And using Slash gives you more flexibility, because every 2 action points I'm able to slash or use something else. Whereas with Ray Strike, I just Ray Strike, and then I gotta wait the 6 AP or the 5 AP, whatever it costs, to then do my action. So it's really cool that they have that flexibility there. I also, and then like the aspect of, I have these abilities like Charging Strike that is an AoE ability for a zone, and it doesn't cost any mana. It just costs AP. It's just a regular attack. That's so unorthodox for a JRPG, in my opinion. And I approve of it so much. It made this game so much more interesting. It made characters like Claire that much more usable. Even Rinna, one of her dancing form, which I don't actually talk about, but I thought her having 2 forms was really cool. But her dancing form, one of her base abilities is to heal people. It's cool. It's just cool. It's super cool that attacks can go off simultaneously if the targets are different. I really enjoyed this as well. There were situations where I could attack in certain sequences to make it so that I could get my AP built up faster. It was a little bit of strategy added on there. Like if I were to use Gaia Strike on one enemy and then Terra Burst or whatever it was called on like another zone, they would go at the same time, as long as one of those enemies did not go in first, or someone was interrupting them going. Like there was still a turn order of sorts, but it was just super cool. The only thing that I wish were there, and it's probably a technical limitation, is that I do wish that some things overlapped more, like certain spells, certain other abilities. I would imagine that the game has the ability to detect if an attack is going to hit or not. Maybe it doesn't. I also understand that it could get a little dicey, you know, if you're buffing a character who, you know, just dies or whatever during the buff. But um, you know, for I guess for certain things, it would have just been nice. Or if two characters can attack the same enemy. But again, you know, if it dies to one, you know, but that's where the hit detection comes in. But yeah, I actually like the combat. I like that there were different camera angles. I don't think any of the camera angles were useful for me, except for the fixed camera angle. Camera was moving a little bit too much in all the other ones. But I like the concept. I like the implementation. It was cool. I didn't even mention this, but the color of the AP also matters, which was something that I haven't utilized in a very long time, and I was going to do so for the final boss, and I forgot. But if it's red, you take less damage. If it's green, you take more damage, and if it's blue, I don't know. It doesn't say, but maybe you just take normal damage. I don't know. But I think that's super cool. It adds another dynamic of strategy there because you can be a little bit more defensive that way. And you can react better by doing that. And it's cool. I approve of this combat system. For dungeons, I don't have any good things to say about the dungeons. I think every single dungeon in this game is freaking obnoxious. It has practical dungeon design issues. It has a lot of, I guess, encounters. It they feel like old school dungeons where they want you to get lost and spend, you know, hours in them fighting enemies because I guess it builds up playtime or something. I wasn't down with it. For Cardinal Sins, game has a silent protagonist. A very weird silent protagonist, I might add. The guitar, whose name I'm forgetting, Patimo, I believe it is. There are multiple instances in this game where I feel like Patimo is saying something that Mouse would be saying. And it's kind of awkward because it's like, well, hold on a second. Why is Patimo saying that? Like that reads like a Mouse line. But yeah, silent protagonist, I ain't down with that. Backup party earns less experience. So basically anybody that's not in your party earns 0 experience essentially, which, you know, I would prefer that characters earn 100% experience. That way I have the freedom to choose whatever character I want. This game already punishes you for not using characters because you're not learning their skills, because you're not using their skills. They try to navigate around this with the party level, which I think is an interesting thing by design, where if you want to use a new character, they're not going to start off at like 5 HP. Because of the party level, they're going to be at like a similar HP band of where your characters are at. Like most of my weaker party members had like 3,000 HP. Or more spellcasting oriented characters were like at 3,000 HP, where more frontline characters were in like the 5,000. I think that's a neat idea. I don't think it navigates around, like it navigates around the cardinal sin, but I don't think it negates the cardinal sin. But I do applaud the implementation, actually. At the same time, it does beg the question, though, of, you know, why would you try to navigate around the issue instead of just completely eliminating it? But here we are. I have here no value indicator or tell to determine enemy HP. And something that I was noticing later on is there are some enemies that I have fought that seem to slump over at the, like, towards the end of the fight. Twin Boom, I think, was one of them. And Zelpherpolis at the end was another one. Now, I don't know if this is consistent across all enemies. I haven't paid that much attention to it, partly because a lot of enemies that I fight, I one-shot. Or I do like large chunks of damage that I'm probably skipping that portion of the fight. But I think I'm going to leave this Cardinal Sin in here just because I prefer to have the enemy's HP visible to some degree. Whether it's, this little marker that just changes colors, or whenever I select over them, I get to see their HP. I would just need that to be a thing. I know that Anno has the ability to see people's HP, but I'm not going to let that one negate this because it's only up there for like a second and a half. And there's a lot of information up there to read. There's their HP, their name, their like height and width and stuff like that. It's what elements they're strong against and what elements they're weak against. It's a lot of information to look at a glance, and you only have a tiny amount of time to look at it. And it doesn't seem like you can access that information again without using the ability again and having another 1.5 seconds to do so. It's a waste of a turn. And then the last one is forcing the player to use certain party members. Yeah, they started doing this towards, they were kind of doing this earlier, but it was mostly a bigger thing towards the mid to late game here, where certain characters are like, I'm gonna go. And I'm just like, I've never used you before. Why would I want you in my party? But, it is what it is. It's Cardinal Sin. For sound and music, I thought some of the music was pretty solid in this game. I'm not necessarily in the position of feeling like super gravitated to most of the music, but some of the encounter themes were interesting, and I did like some of the like instrument music. I think some of those were nice, so it was cool. There's no voice acting. For graphics, I actually like the graphics in this game. It's definitely PlayStation 2 graphics, but I like the amount of effort I guess they put into it. It feels pretty good for a PlayStation 2 game. I don't think I had any issues with it. I think the animations were decent. I think they did a pretty good job with it. The look of the game and the feel of the game is pretty nice. Replay value. Does the game offer additional story content in a second playthrough to warrant playing the game again? Gonna say no on this one, but yeah, I'm gonna say no on this one. Getting say 3 or 4 extra characters is probably not going to change anything. Not in a drastic way, I would say, and different endings doesn't. I don't care about that. Is the game worth recommending? So earlier I had mentioned that this game is, it's one of those games where you could buy it for your kid and they would be like invested in it for, a very long period of time, because it does a really good job of wasting your time. Trying to figure things out, which is kind of one of those things that older games like to do. They make very specific decisions to make you spend more time in certain areas, or or fight more encounters or what have you. So I could see myself recommending this game to somebody in a scenario like that. But as a whole, I don't think I would recommend this game without a list of caveats. You know, like you're probably going to want to take notes. You need to pay attention to certain things. You probably don't want to play this game blind. And if you're not going to play it blind, you probably want to check to see if there's any strategy guides or maybe like blind walkthroughs or something like that available. Because let's be honest here, figuring out this stuff on your own, you're gonna get annoyed with it before you feel satisfaction. And I feel like if you're getting annoyed with something and then you figure it out, you don't get any satisfaction from that. And there were many, if not most, if not all moments in this game for me where I felt little to no satisfaction because I got annoyed first. If the developer is watching, I think I've illustrated pretty decently where I think this game needed to go be a better game for me. It just didn't have direction where direction was needed. With that said, though, I still had fun. And I think there is something to be said there because games where you make your own fun, you can kind of do whatever you want in a sense. And I did enjoy the theory crafting aspect of this, of having to make a decision and then going to execute that decision and finding out it didn't work. So it's like, okay, I need to reevaluate. What else do I need to do? Who do I think would be relevant to this? How can I progress this storyline? Oh, I just stumbled onto this storyline, you know. Okay, let's move forward with that one. Like there was enjoyment in that aspect for me. And it just needed direction. Just needed I needed the game to offer me tools to help me move things forward. If it had like character relationship plots or something like that, and it had like certain times, there's so many things that could have been done to improve the direction that the player can get to progress, because there's just so many moments where I went, okay, I don't know what to do, so I'm just gonna go do this. And then there were some moments where I was just like, okay, I'm kind of out of ideas. I'm going to just go to sleep until this day and then try X. And then I stumble upon something that I wasn't even like going for. And I don't think that should ever happen. I shouldn't ever have to stumble upon something accidentally like that. In that manner, you know, stumbling upon stuff is fine, but like having no idea how to progress something and then I just start to go do something else and that's how I progress it. It doesn't feel very good to progress like that for me. But would I want a sequel? I'd wait for reviews probably, and then I'd probably wait for my peers to potentially check it out before I I dive in myself. There would probably be a little bit of nostalgia involved, and maybe I would buy it just to be like, all right, Ephemeral Fantasia 2, let's do it. But yeah, I probably not, probably not. And you know, it's been 22 years, probably not gonna happen. But anyways, those are my thoughts. To reiterate my thoughts, uh, the game is okay. But in order for the game to be okay, you have to have a certain mindset going into this game and have certain expectations, I guess. And I went into this game expecting the worst, so it only had the ability to go up for me. And I think that benefited me a lot because there were things that I gravitated to and I liked. And there were a lot of moments in this game where I had fun. And I think that was important for me. So it's not the worst game in the world. It's not the worst. It's probably not even the worst game that I've ever played. But it's not a great game to play though. This is probably a pass or watch someone else play it, or something like that. But that's gonna wrap it up for me for today. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Probably no stream tomorrow, but see ya the next time I see ya. I gotta go watch Crayson's playthrough of this game now. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm out. Peace.